Good morning. This is Father Stephen Kelly from St. John's Church in Detroit, and we're continuing our series of daily morning meditations where we generally look at one or another of lessons that are assigned for morning or evening prayer, what is known as the daily office lectionary. Today for Tuesday, let's take a look at the lessons assigned for evening prayer from the book of the Acts of the Apostles. We're on chapter 14, beginning at verse number 8. And there sat a certain man at Lystra, impotent in his feet, being a cripple from his mother's womb, who never had walked. The same heard Paul speak, who steadfastly beholding him and perceiving that he had faith to be healed, said with a loud voice, "Stand upright on thy feet." And he leaped and walked. And when the people saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in the speech of the Lycaonian, "The gods have come down to us in the likeness of men." And they called Barnabas Juniper and Paul Mercurius, because he was the chief speaker. Then the priest of Juniper, which was before their city, brought oxen and garlands unto the gates, and would have done sacrifice with the people. Which, when the apostles, Barnabas and Paul, heard of, they rent their clothes and ran in among the people, crying out, and saying, "Sirs, why do ye these things? We also are men of like passions with you, and preach unto you that ye should turn from these vanities unto the living God, which made heaven and earth, the sea, and all things that are therein, who in times past suffered all nations to walk in their own ways. Nevertheless, he left not himself without witness, in that he did good and gave us rain from heaven and fruitful seasons, filling our hearts with food and gladness. And with these sayings scarce restrained they the people, that they had not done sacrifice unto them." So, obviously, Paul and Barnabas, when they're going into these areas, and we hear about this also when they're in Athens, they're a religious people, and even human beings today, even though church attendance continues to be plummeting, we are at heart a religious people. In the case of Lycaonians, they of course assumed that Paul and Barnabas were who they had learned from their myths, being Mercurius and Juniper, and tried to assign that to them. But nowadays we set up idols, false idols, being sport and being musicians and being individuals, and self as idol. All those things we set up as idols, but we worship something. There's no vacuum. You take God out of the equation, there's no vacuum. It's not nothing. You end up worshiping something, and if it's not the living God, if it's not Jesus Christ, whom our Heavenly Father sent down to die on the cross for us, if they're not going to worship him, they're going to worship something, and it's either going to be a false god of some sort of invention, or it's going to be something tangible in that they make an idol of themselves. And so human beings are meant to worship. St. Augustine of Hippo said, "Our hearts are restless, O God, until they rest in you." And people try to answer that restlessness by worshiping something, and it will be something that they will worship. So anyway, and I always have to think about, I'll give a shout out to our former parishioner now living in upstate New York, Cheryl Howell, who had miraculous surgery and healing in her knees. She was unable to walk for many years, was confined to a motorized cart in a wheelchair because of problems she's had, and she was able to have that fixed by God's grace, and they were able to repair that. And I had the great grace to be present when she took her first steps in years in rehab. And of course, she had to rebuild all that muscle tone after the surgery. And here we have a story of a man who never walked, and he's able to leap up at the word of Paul and Barnabas, and is able to walk, right? So that the healing was not just the impotent feet, but all of the muscle ability for somebody to walk, and that's a miracle. Cheryl was a miracle boy. I'll tell you what, you want to talk about tears of joy when Cheryl walked up to that altar rail for the first time ever, being able to walk again, to receive communion at the rail rather than my coming down joyfully to bring it to her. The tears of joy on everybody's face when Cheryl walked up to the rail. Thanks be to God for that. Wow. Okay, so today is Tuesday, 12:15 Holy Communion, and 4 o'clock evening prayer. I hope you can join us in person. If not, check out live stream where you're watching this morning meditation, and may God grant you a Tuesday that is full of blessings.